News. I'm Lillian Wu. We'll find out today how Republicans would like to distribute $1 trillion in coronavirus relief.
Treasury Secretary Steven Mnuchin on Fox News Sunday said more help is coming, but there is still money left from past packages.
We have about $1 trillion to $1.5 trillion still left.
The new Republican plan is said to lower unemployment benefits to a fraction of past salaries.
Fox's Gernal Scott, Democrats pushing back against that cut.
On CBS Face the Nation, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said that gets complicated.
People don't all make a salary.
The Democratic-controlled House passed its stimulus proposal in May.
And a role reversal on England's highest peak. A St. Bernard named Daisy had to get rescued after she got stuck. The 120-pound rescue dog carried down safely after a 5-hour rescue mission by a 16-member team. America's listening to Fox News.
From the Fox News Podcasts Network, download and listen to The Untold Story with Martha McCallum.
Dr. Shelby Steele, Senior Fellow at the Hoover Institution.
I don't think it's the smartest thing in the world for blacks to worry that much about politics. I don't think you will find many solutions to the problems they face in the political arena, no matter who becomes the president.
Subscribe and listen now by going to foxnewspodcasts.com. America's listening to Fox News. There's never been a more critical time. Fox News Media is bringing America together. America is watching news and fearless debate on Fox News Channel. We're invested in you from Wall Street to Main Street to your street with Fox Business. America is listening wherever you are, on radio and podcasts, trending the stories you need anytime you want online, and Fox Nation, streaming the entertainment that celebrates America. Fox News Media, America's news, and much more.
Murphy's Builder Supply is where you need to go for all your home improvement projects and hardware needs. They've been serving folks in this area since 1946. Murphy's offers some products and services that you may not know about. They now sell ammunition, both bullets and shells. Murphy's also sells personalized tags for dog collars. They build customized screens for windows and doors. Murphy's can rekey locks, and of course they can make keys. They cut glass for windows, plus Murphy's has monthly doorbuster specials. Check their Facebook page to see what's on sale. Murphy's Builder Supply, 156 Northeast Broad Street, Jessup.
Damon's Famous Fingers and Wings restaurant in Jessup is now open for business, practicing social distancing, but still serving that great food that Damon's is famous for. Come inside or come through the drive-thru, but Damon's is open inside and welcomes back its customers. The menu's the same, the service is fast, and the food is fantastic, and the sauces remain the same, mild, wild, insane, or inferno. The number is the same, 588-WING, 588-9464. Damon's Restaurant on West Cherry Street in Jessup. Dining room now open for business. Come on in and enjoy a great meal today.
A bank that puts people first. First Southern Bank, investing in you since 1907. Serving Jessup, Patterson, and Waycross. A true community bank led by experienced neighborhood bankers that live and work in our community. Offering competitive loan options for commercial and consumer clients. Stop by the Jessup branch and meet branch manager Mandy Yeomans and her fantastic team. Call 912-810-1540. Let First Southern Bank be your bank of choice. First Southern Bank. Member FDIC, equal housing lender.
802 World Famous Butch and Bob Show, brought to you by Murphy Builder Supply, First Southern Bank, and Damon's Famous Fingers and Wings. Well, on a Monday, no catchy name here.
Well, we got a good friend on the phone, Bill Werkheiser, state representative. I called him last night, said I need a guest, and he said he'd call in. A lot going on, a lot of different topics to begin with. Bill, appreciate you being here, first of all, on the show. Always glad to have you.
Absolutely. Always glad to be with y'all.
Let's talk about, our school board's got a big decision tomorrow. They got to decide what they're going to do as far as schools opening up, and it's happening all across the state of Georgia. Also happening with colleges. I have a story today where 24 of the 26 presidents of universities across the state of Georgia stated they want classes to begin with students in class and teachers in class as well. So it seems like that's the push across the state of Georgia. What's your thoughts on school openings?
Yeah, I think we need to do that. We need to get there, and like everything else, it's become a political draw line. The schools in Atlanta, several of them have canceled, haven't canceled school, but they've canceled in person. They want to go entirely online, whereas those in outside of the metro areas have said we need to get the students back in school, and it's kind of a trickle down effect like a lot of other stuff. And as Kemp said the other day, as long as we're having the kids at home, they're having to do child care or they can't go to work. So it affects everybody. The big debate now is whether we do a universal school opening that they were proposing just a week ago, but then back down, kind of the same arguments that the cities were having about having a universal mandate about masks. And so the school board and school superintendent, Richard Wood, said, no, let's let all the school districts decide their own date. And as you mentioned, Wayne County is still waiting for theirs. My other two counties, Platinum and Evans, theirs is one of the earlier dates, and that could be subject to change. But right now, they're gunning toward August the 10th. And but some of the school districts in the proposed statewide, first proposed date was, right for Labor Day around September 8th. But again, that's going to be a local decision.
Do you have any insight on why? We had a report last week. It looked like the Georgia School Boards Association was going to make a decision to postpone everything to September the 8th, but they totally took it off their agenda, didn't even discuss it. Do you have any insight on why they decided to just punt it to the local school systems? I read their reason. Their reason is that local school districts have a better feel of what's taking place, but they could have took this out of the local school system's hands and made it easier for everybody involved if they would have at least made a decision, but they simply didn't even discuss it. Any insight on why they decided to do that?
Well, depending on who you talk to, they said it was never on the agenda, that was a last-minute request from the administration, from the governor's office, and they did not put it on their agenda, and so they didn't discuss it. But you're right. The argument was they were hearing from the locals saying, don't decide for us. It's the same argument that the cities are having about, not having the state tell them what to do, basically. So, we try to, the conservative position on all legislating is legislation. In fact, the other day when you had Congressman Carter on, he mentioned that phrase that government operates best at the local decision closest to the people. And so by default, the state tries to let cities and counties, enact local legislation and because they're closest to the people, just like on the state level, we don't like the federal government telling us how to operate. And so that was the reasoning behind that.
And it's your understanding that the governor and the state school superintendent, they have a good working relationship. Is that correct?
They do. And so that's also been debate and something that's actually changed throughout history. And states differ on this. A lot of states, their state school superintendent is no different than the revenue commissioner, the DNR commissioner, like Mark Williams. All those positions are appointed. We elect our state superintendent. So that and there's pros and cons both ways, but one of the cons is with the administration changing every 4 to 8 years in the governor's office, you could get someone in there's a little tension. Well, there was some tension between Deal and Woods, and that's why he was moving toward, I don't know if you remember the big debate about the failing school systems and the opportunity school districts, where he had the top chief of the chief turnaround school district report directly to him as opposed to the school superintendent, which that, caused some riff right there. But when Kemp was elected, Kemp and Woods, they get along really good. They seem to be on the same page, right or wrong. They come across as a very unified front. And so generally what you hear from one, you'll hear from the other.
Listen, our school board discussed it last Tuesday, and listened to the debate between virtual learning and in-class learning. There doesn't seem to be any debate that the in-school learning is a lot better. They said that there was a lot of problems with the virtual learning. Some areas in Wayne County don't have internet access. That was a problem. Some kids just didn't get online and didn't do anything. And I'll tell you another group of parents that are really in panic mode right now. I read this over the weekend, is if you have a special needs student, they don't have that in-school learning with the special needs teachers, they're going to fall way behind. And that's a service that's desperately needed. And I don't know if people are thinking about those kids, but I'm surprised those people around the state of Georgia aren't, up yelling and screaming in arms, about their kids need in-school learning.
Yeah, and one problem there, and they do, and I happen to know a lot about that because my oldest daughter, that's what she did in Cobb County. She was director, actually, for the whole county for special ed. And those kids, especially those who are on the autistic spectrum, need structure. And that's an understatement. They want to know what their day, they want their day to be the exact same every single day. A lot of us like to do different things. In fact, one interesting anecdote, one time early in her career, she decided, we'll do something different. We'll watch a movie or have cupcakes or something. Even though that sounds fun to most school-age children, it did not go over well because that upset their schedule. And so these parents are not used to, especially when they're trying to juggle, if they are at work, now it's hard to find a babysitter every day of the week. So now they're having to call in different babysitters. So it is the opposite of that as far as structure. You make a good point. Why isn't there a unified voice? There doesn't seem to be a statewide organized, they belong to groups, but there's not an organization that speaks for them like you have PAGE, the Professional Association of Georgia Educators, who has weighed in on this. So that's one of the problems is, they depend on their local groups, their regional groups, Facebook groups, but they don't seem to have a statewide organization that can advocate for them. So that's one of the problems there.
And I guess the only other point I'm making is kind of funny to me. Football practices are full throttle. Tynes, the executive director, says we're going to have as many kids out there on the football field as we possibly can. Football season's got to go. But yet we're talking about debating on whether or not kids are going to go to school. So it's kind of ironic to me that, football practices all across the state of Georgia are full throttle. They're looking for a season, but yet we're still debating on whether or not kids are going to go to school on campus. So it's kind of ironic to me. But let's move to another topic, which is very interesting. The mayor of the city of Atlanta and the governor still in this debate on whether or not masks are mandatory. They looked like they were going to reach an out-of-court settlement, but apparently that fell flat over the weekend, so they're all expected to go to court on Tuesday. How do you see this playing out? And do you think they'll be able to avoid a court session tomorrow sometime today?
I know they both are working. They would love to settle out of court. But let's talk about that. I'm glad you brought that up because it ties directly in with what we're just talking about. And that has a great local effect. And we've heard from our local mayors in Wayne County. So I just talked about a statewide organization. So like in education, you have PAGE, Professional Association of Georgia Educators. Well, the cities have an organization that represents them, and it's GMA, the Georgia Municipal Association. Well, this issue right here, the GMA decided to file an amicus brief, which is amicus is a Latin word for friend, so friends of the court brief. They're not named as part of the lawsuit, but they have a vested interest, so they voluntarily, and most amicus briefs are voluntary, they're not asked. So GMA jumped in on the side of Mayor Bottom, saying, hey, the cities are against Kemp doing this. Well, there's one problem with that. They're not, unlike PAGE and most organizations where the membership gets to vote or they take a unanimous position. That is far from the truth. They're basically representing the larger cities. They're speaking for the Atlanta, Columbus, Augusta, Macon, Savannah. We actually heard from some of our mayors in Wayne County said, look, we're with Kemp. Don't lump us in with that, with that they are not speaking for us. And so that has created quite a problem, because GMA, as you can imagine, in the legislature is a pretty powerful organization. But when they choose not to represent the vast majority of their membership, there's a problem with credibility, for one thing, when they come to some other issues. So they've got their own issues going on there, which is a very interesting dynamic, because if you count number of cities, there's over 500 cities in the state of Georgia, I think 539 or something like that. As you can imagine, the vast majority of them are smaller or rural by number. But if you take the population of the top 10, they dwarf those other 500. So you got a lot of mayors who are not happy with their own organization right now.
You know, the governor says it's unenforceable, but you have these businesses that they're enforcing it. You know, Walmart, you can't go in Walmart without a mask. McDonald's, you can't go in McDonald's without a mask. And other restaurants are saying the same thing. So they're enforcing it in restaurants and businesses. So why can't it be enforced if they want it in place?
Well, and I think that's the governor's point was you can request, and many of the signs that I've seen have said, and I think this is the way to go, we request or we highly encourage you, but to do a mandate, I don't know, that kind of, depends where you are on the liberty scale, just goes against the grain, because, we have a lot of laws for a lot of other stuff. But as you and I have discussed many times, both on the show and offline, is, if nobody's forcing you to go to that store or that restaurant, so frequent those places that support your beliefs, ideas, however you want to have, you want to say it, but no one's forcing you to go anywhere.
Right, we've been saying that from day one. It still comes down to freedom. It comes down to choice. Every individual has a choice on what they want to do. Same thing with the schools. No matter what the school decides, if you're a parent and you have a child and you don't think it's safe, you have to decide whether or not you're going to send your kid to school or not. So, it still comes down to individual choice, I would think. So,
unless your kid's on the football team.
Well, what's interesting, there's different laws about that. We read that story last week. Fulton County superintendent came out and said if you're not on campus and attending classes, you can't participate in extracurricular activities. I haven't seen that in other school systems, but they're saying that the law says that you have to be on campus in class a certain amount of time in order to participate. If you're not there, you won't be able to participate. And that was Fulton County's ruling. So
I think that's a real stretch of the intent of the law.
So you don't think that'll hold up?
What he's referring to is you can't be homeschooled, say in Wayne County, and then decide to play for Wayne County High School. You have to be an active participant in the school system. I don't think that means if we're on a pandemic break that if you miss 2 weeks of being in, they're just trying to come up with, that's really stretching, pulling the thin air, trying to match their agenda, saying why they don't want to open schools. But like I said, it's interesting that the bigger inner cities have a different perspective. They don't want in-person. There may be a reason for that if they're more populated and tight, and that's been the governor's position from the very beginning. What's good for Wayne County is not the same that's good for Fulton County. Let the locals decide. And so that's one more example
Well, they're going to be interesting decisions, that's for sure. I say colleges have to make the decision as well. High schools are making decisions, so it's going to be interesting next. The good news is that, major league sports teams are coming back. Major League Baseball is back. NBA is going to start. NHL is going to start. College football looks like they want to start. So, the sport world looks like it's trying its best to come back and try to, bring some type of sports entertainment back to the society. Still not making decisions on fans, but I read somewhere where the NFL teams are starting to determine how many fans they can let into the stadium at one time. So, when do you think you'll see the fans start found in these places?
I know the sooner the better. I did watch. I'm not a big baseball fan. Watched a little last night because it's about the only thing that's on. That you made a great point about the schools. It's not just the matter of you like online versus in person. They're not equal. If it was a controlled environment, it would be, but I'll give you another example. My sister-in-law, Kathy's sister down in Florida, they were operating much different than Georgia was when they shut the schools down immediately. Georgia basically took a break. Florida said you had to have class every day. They were providing laptops, and so they were trying to do what some of these schools in Atlanta are saying, oh, we'll just move online. She said it was a disaster. She said just take and roll. Because of what she said, slow internet service. But even if you had perfect internet system in every single school, the kids are not engaged. You can log on. We've all been in Zoom meetings where you can log in, not have your face shown and continue cooking dinner. You can be listening, but are you as engaged? And how do we even know the student is listening? They can log in and then be outside playing. So it's
and one of our board members made a good point too. How do you do chemistry online?
Yeah.
How do you certain classes that I just don't know how. But listen to the national statistic. They talked about virtual learning. The math test scores are going down 30%. Other scores are. They just said that it's just not. It's not equal. It's not even close to what they're. Listen to all the medical and educational experts say. It's not even close. We told that story.
And again, that's if you could. That's if every school had. If every student had a perfect internet and computer system, it still wouldn't be equal. And, of course, that's not true. So.
All right. Well, I got to ask you, you see the numbers continue to rise, state of Florida, state, but they don't say why they're rising. Have you any idea why the spikes are taking place? Is it because everybody just let their guard down like most people say, or why do you think it's spreading so quickly in these two states? And California is the leading state right now, so.
I don't know if you saw over the weekend, Florida just passed New York, and now they're the number one number of cases. But that's a good example. So Florida actually passed New York in number of positive cases, and there's a lot of arguments as to how accurate. Like if my wife is a nurse, and she had a patient that's got tested, I think 6 times. And that was kind of an anomaly. She's trying to get 2 negatives in a row, and she's been tested positive 3 times. Well, that's 3 positives right there. And you say, well, don't they scrub that data? That's maybe they do, maybe they don't, depending on who you talk to. But back to Florida and New York, so they've got more cases, but they're nowhere clear. They're almost like half the deaths of New York, and that's why I think the 2 stats we need to be looking at is number of deaths and hospital capacity, because the number of cases, if they're not fatal, such as in Florida, back to your original question, why is it going up so quick? I think we do have what's called pandemic fatigue. We were in lockdown mode, and things haven't changed that much, but yet. I know myself, I'm getting out more. You can only stay in the house for so long. I think people are getting out. People are getting relaxed. I think people now know more and more. Just think, a month ago, Tatnall and Wayne were in the 20s and 30s as far as number of cases. Tatnall, Evans, and Wayne, all within almost the same week, all had their first death. And as bad as that is for a family member, it still is only one death out of a lot of cases. So I think the mindset of a lot of people is, well, if it doesn't, I want to get it and get it over with, or I think now we all know people who have had it, and they've explained their symptoms, and they got over it. So maybe we've let our guard down, and we don't view it as serious as we did when Wayne had 6 or 7 cases.
Well, hurricane season's upon us. It was interesting. The hurricane that came there, the Houston, Texas coast, I saw a report where they told us people would just hatch it down and don't go anywhere because they don't have any shelters because they're spread the COVID. That would spread. So is that going to happen in southeast Georgia as well? Say a hurricane comes up this way, they're just going to tell people to just bury the hatchet and hope for the best, or how's it going to work?
I don't know now. They're predicting it's going to be a pretty heavy
hurricane season, right? Season. Yeah. So, that's another thing we got to worry about. So, I know you just got through the legislative session. I didn't get a chance to talk to you. I know you were on the air, Jonathan, talked to you, but I'm curious. One thing that really didn't get a lot of notice, the vaping issue. They increased the age of that. Is that correct? And they increased it to 21 years of age before you can vape in the state of Georgia. Is that correct?
You know what? I'm not to plead ignorance on that, and I'll tell you why. That was a bill that was getting changed at the last minute because all our focus was on whether it should be taxed or not. I'll have to get back to that on that because, like I said, on day 40,
I think they did tax that. That's what was interesting. They didn't increase the tobacco increase, but I think they increased the tax on vaping and increased the age on vaping is what I read. So I was just curious about that. So any other things from the legislative session we need to be aware of? Like I said, the budget, of course, got passed. Everybody commended everybody for working hard to get that through. Any other issues or any things, legislation? We talked about the coal ash legislation that Stephen Meeks got passed, which was a big thing for Wayne County. Any other highlights that you need to let us know about the legislative session?
Yeah, that was a big deal, luckily. A couple of things. And I'm looking at my list here. The biggest thing with the budget, as big as the cuts were, it was almost miraculous, and Senator Tiller did a great job chairing the appropriation side. The fact that we prevented not a single furlough day from whether education, public safety, all the way down was pretty amazing. Some of the non-budget stuff, of course, we passed the hate crimes bill. Big thing about education is, we eliminated 5 of the milestone tests, and that's something that's been a 3-year process. We eliminated some testing last year, but we're trying to get back to where teachers are teaching and not, focus on teaching to the test. So that's certainly not why they got into that. Not as much on broadband as I would have hoped we'd have done, but we did do a couple of things. We put some limit on pole attachment fees after allowing our EMCs to get into the broadband divisions if they wanted to. So we furthered some legislation on that. Made some progress. Again, another things like we do kind of micro steps on some of these issues, the surprise medical billing. This year I felt like we made more progress than probably the previous 3 years combined, and that it's going to be a lot more transparency. The average patient can go to a website and see what providers are inpatient, so they won't be surprised by out-of-network billing. So those were a couple of good things. Something was a second. We're going to have 2 constitutional amendments on the ballot. One is the right to sue government if they overstep constitutional rights, and I'm drawing a blank on the other one, but I'll think of it. One thing I would like to say that when our groups start meeting, I know speaking of all over the place, I don't think the Glenville Rotary Club is meeting yet in person. Claxton has already started. Already spoken to them. Would love to speak to any group, no matter how small or large. Rotary, Kiwanis, Optimus, Garden Club, Church Group. If anybody wants to hear a legislative update and then tailored specifically for their group, would love to come speak to them. And in part it's not just me speaking, but getting to answer questions from the group. So they can contact me if they would like that opportunity.
Yeah, Bill Werkheiser on the phone with us too. We talked yesterday. Another story that's interesting to me is that cleanup of the Golden Ray down there off St. Simon's. I'm not sure when that thing is going to be finalized. They keep getting people testing positive. That is some kind of undertaking down there, though. So it'll be interesting to see how long that takes to get completed.
And the ironic thing is that's becomes quite a tourist draw. They might want to sit there longer because people are fascinated, and they should be. That thing. Think about this. It was not near full capacity. It's got close to 4,500 vehicles on there. So think about a parking lot that has 4,500 vehicles on it, and nowhere near capacity. That's how big that thing is. And so, a lot of people are stopping by just to watch the process from a distance. So
that piece of equipment they brought in from Texas, I think, is something that everybody else is looking at. That thing is it's unbelievable. The size of that thing is incredible.
Yeah. So you've seen it?
I went down there. Yeah, I have to admit, like I said, it is kind of a tourist. It's just interesting to see how. I read about.
Yeah, I would love to do that.
I read about that piece of equipment they brought in from Texas. Said how big it was. So I wanted to go check it out. So I did go down and check it out. So it's pretty wild. So. Well,
I would love to do that. Be added to that number.
Well, again, we appreciate you calling in here on a Monday. Normally it's Wednesday's Werkheiser, but again, lots going on. Going to follow this story between hopefully they reach an out-of-court settlement. It'd be interesting if it goes to court and the judge makes a ruling. I'm sure it'll be appealed and it'll go all the way to the Georgia Supreme Court. Wouldn't you suspect?
So by the time all that happens, the virus will probably be long gone. So that's the crazy thing about these court cases. And it does seem silly to the average person why we're spending time, money, and effort on trying to settle this with the courts. And it's crazy that I don't know. And again, the cities. If you think about during the pandemic, the early these bigger cities that kind of control GMA, they were begging the governor for a statewide shutdown every week. That's all we heard about. Shut us down, shut us down. And so he finally acted, and part of that shutdown included beaches and different other areas. And it was those same 10 cities that started screaming, "What are you doing? That's our decision." For weeks they begged, to have a statewide mandate. So, he can't win. So anyway, that's kind of ridiculous. You can't have it both ways. So,
it's like this decision tomorrow for the school board. Chairman Nick Ellis said it best. No matter what they decide to do, everybody's not going to be happy. But decisions have to be made, and unfortunately, State Board of Education's pushed it to the local board level, so the local boards will make the decision. But we talked about this from the get-go. It's the same thing with the COVID-19. There's no consistency across the board. There's not one solution, not one theory. Everybody's doing their own thing. Maybe that's why it continues to spread, because there's not one consistent message. They even changed the mask. Remember when it first began, they said the masks were not mandatory. Didn't need a mask. Now everybody's saying you got to wear a mask. So there's people out there who just don't know what to believe. The national media is to blame. I blame them a lot because their message is just gloom and doom. They don't give you any of the good news. It's all everything's bad. That's why I can't watch it. you turn on the national media, you think the world's coming to an end tomorrow. So, I mean, that's the frustration, though. No one has a consistent message. No one has the right answer. You know, everybody hoping for a vaccine, but you hear different stories about when that's going to be available as well. So it's something that apparently most people have decided you just got to live with, you know, and try to make the best of it. Most people I see when they go out in public, they are wearing a mask, you know, but the restaurants continue to be full that I see, which is good for local businesses. Most people are going to local businesses. They're pretty much trying to get back to as much normalcy as they can. So, but as we mentioned, it's still individual choice. Everybody has an individual choice whether they want to go to restaurants, go to businesses, you know, stay at home, whatever they want to do. It still comes down to personal choice. So.
Yeah, now everything's become so political and biased, it doesn't matter what the information is now. We're past that point because if you're an anti-mask person and you see an article why masks are helpful, you dismiss it and say, oh, they just have an agenda. Or if you're a pro-mask person and you see an article that says it's not that effective, you say the exact same thing. It's like watching a political debate. Both sides always think their candidate won. So makes it even harder.
It's interesting. We'll continue to follow it. Again, we do appreciate you calling in this morning. Again, I needed a guest, and you bailed me out the last minute. But it's always good talking to you. A lot going on, and we'll talk to you soon. Hopefully get you in the studio soon and talk to you more. But I appreciate you being here today on the World Famous Butch and Bob Show, Bill.
Well, thank y'all for what you do, and always glad to be here, and thanks again. Bye-bye.
Okay, we'll be back to wrap it up right after this.
A bank that puts people first. First Southern Bank, investing in you since 1907. Serving Jessup, Patterson, and Waycross. A true community bank led by experienced neighborhood bankers that live and work in our community. Offering competitive loan options for commercial and consumer clients. Stop by the Jessup branch and meet branch manager Mandy Yeomans and her fantastic team. Call 912-810-1540. Let First Southern Bank be your bank of choice. First Southern Bank. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.